Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And the guest we have today, again, needs no introduction. We're back with Ganesh. How are you in the new year, Ganesh?
Oh, it's fabulous. Fabulous to be with you. I just had a few days in the sun because, of course, in the southern hemisphere, it's summertime, and it's been nice to swim in the ocean and do some fishing and enjoy the company of some family and friends, which has been wonderful.
Oh, look at us, Landon. We both look really pasty white, don't we? And then you've got Ganesh, who just looks so. I've been out in the sun.
I know.
What's wrong with us?
We do it wrong here in the northern hemisphere. You know, you get Christmas where you get a week or two off at Christmas time, usually for work, and that's the slow time. And it's freezing cold and snowstorms, and you shovel your walk. We need to do it like the southern hemisphere. Go swim in, have summer at that Christmas break. That's the way to do it.
Christmas in July. I'm starting a campaign. That's it. So,
well, you're all very welcome to come down and visit me here in Wellington. So
you keep saying that, Landon. We've got to do some podcasting from New Zealand with Ganesh.
22-hour flight and $5,000 plane ticket that's stopping us, Ganesh.
Little details. We can figure this out. We're Mormonish. We can.
That's right.
No, thank goodness for Zoom. You know what I mean? Because or StreamYard, because that way we can talk to people all over the world. So this is going to be a really, really interesting and pretty fun and insightful podcast. Ganesh and I were always chatting on the side about different things about the Book of Mormon, and he has put out recently, and I hope we'll have some links in the show notes. Just awesome come follow me content, and you recently just put it all into like one place, right? One big video. Yeah, talk about that for just a second, because it kind of leads into what this is about.
So I've been doing these little TikTok videos about the Book of Mormon, the Come Follow Me program, and then I combine sections of them into YouTube videos and put them on my YouTube page so that those who are not connected to TikTok can look at them. And so I've gone through a number of kind of analysis or overviews of the Book of Mormon, just as we finished that at the end of the last year. And then I've also now started into the Doctrine and Covenants and early church history, because of course that follows very closely behind. So those are all available, and I love looking at these little intricacies and figuring out what is the psychology behind that. I'm a psychology major, and what are the motivations for the people then, and also maybe how that translates into people now, for why we do these crazy things that we end up doing as members of the church.
No, and you're so good at that. This is what you're so good at, because you're following it so closely. You have the background that you do. You just come up with these things, these insights. The rest of us, we never saw. And as soon as you bring it up, we're like, how did we miss that? I mean, it's just so clear. When you talked about Mosiah, our episode on that was we got such great feedback on that. And people are like, how did I never notice that before? And I'm like, well, because you're not Ganesh. So that's why we have you on to talk about this. So this is another one of those where we were kind of chatting on the side about his content that Ganesh has done. And he just started talking about, there's a lot that the Book of Mormon doesn't say, that it kind of makes you fill in yourself. And I'm like, what? That sounds interesting. So that's a very simplistic way to say it. We will turn it all over to Ganesh now, but this is absolutely a fascinating way to look at the Book of Mormon and why it impacts people. Because even as post-Mormons, I think a lot of us can look back and say, I believed it. It had an impact. It meant something to me. It elicited very strong emotional reactions. Why was that? I mean, is that a question, Landon, that you've ever thought of? Why was it? You loved the Book of Mormon.
I did. I don't. There was a few sections that the wording really would impact me or relate to me. But I think whenever you write a story, there's times when you can relate to something as a human that, oh, I've had an experience similar to that, and you relate to it, and then you think about it, especially something that you quantify as scripture, because then you hold it at some higher value. I really connected with the Book of Mormon more on the adventure story part of it, in my youth, especially as a missionary, the war chapters, those are great, and that's really what you connect with, because it's a war story, but you definitely, different parts of your life, you connect with different things.
Yeah. That's it. So, and I think that Ganesh has prepared again a wonderful slideshow to explain everything we're talking about here. So let's just take it away. Let's stop teasing everybody and making them try to figure out what we're talking about. Let's tell them.
All right, let's share the screen and have a look. Is that all coming up there, right, for you?
Your title
All
is
right, so
your title is literally clickbait, Ganesh.
Oh gosh, clickbait affects us all, because I don't know about you guys, but I spend a lot of time doom scrolling, things like Facebook, and looking for those gems, and sorting out whether I'm going to spend the next half an hour looking at this thing that somebody has put up there for me to find. And of course, there's a number of companies and people who are really good at getting you hooked. And I think that the Book of Mormon is a really interesting hook, and the way that it kind of, gets people thinking and feeling in ways that they immerse themselves or put themselves into the story, kind of like what you were saying, Landon. You apply it to yourself, because that's how the Book of Mormon talks about it, but also that you kind of, your imagination gets drawn into the story, and you fill in the blanks with your own kind of experience and your own hopes and dreams, which mean that it becomes very personal and spiritual, even when there's actually not that much there. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love it. This is a revolutionary idea. I have not heard this discussed before. So it kind of blew my mind when you were clickbaiting me on Messenger going, hey, what about this? So, this is great.
And of course, there's always the hook, right? That, even if you don't quite understand it, but if you have enough faith that you will, that it will be revealed to you, you're not quite getting it because you're not quite faithful enough. But as soon as you're faithful enough, it'll all just slot into place, and you will just be amazing.
Yeah,
so keep reading, keep donating, keep reading, keep donating. Then you'll understand it eventually.
It's just on the horizon, right? It reminds me of the phrase, I'm sorry, but that's too sacred to share with you, right? People say that. They don't have to tell you anything that happened. They just say, I have an experience. It was too sacred. You, in your mind, fill in, it must have been amazing. It must have been incredible. Ooh, I'm getting all goosebumps and shivery. Ooh, I have a confirmation. They never told you anything. You don't know what happened. You don't even know if anything happened. But just by teasing that, it's too sacred, but it did happen to me. You have that emotional response, and maybe your testimony is strengthened, thinking someone else had something happen. But in reality, it's a big nothing burger. There is nothing, nothing that you were told.
The other version of that is it was too special to put into words. Words can't describe it. And we get that all over in the Book of Mormon. We can't tell you because it was just too sacred for words to describe. And in which case, why bring it up then? I don't even know what it is, because you just told me it's too sacred.
That's the whole point. It's clickbait. You know what else is clickbait? I'm just realizing is milk before meat. There's no meat. No one's ever told you any meat. No one's ever given you any meat. But the fact that they keep teasing it, makes you feel all, I'll know someday. It's just a hook.
Oh, and this plays into that whole conspiracy theory, right? Because once you learn something that is kind of a bit fringy, that you you feel really special, right? You feel like, oh gosh, I know this, and this is the meat, this is the thing, and we have a number of them. But that makes you feel like, oh gosh, I'm in the know, and you guys are all, waiting to know this wonderful, amazing truth. And so you feel special, and you feel like you've got the inside scoop.
Yeah, no, I know people that are with groups of people who feel there are coded messages delivered in conference talks and devotionals, and they listen for things very carefully. So when, say, a Wendy Nelson, we've all seen that video from 10 years ago where she says, what if I were to tell you that Jesus is here today, that he's walking among us? A certain group of people will take that as, metaphorical or hypothetical. Another group knows 100% that's a coded message that Jesus is here, special knowledge, all goosebumpy. So yeah, I think it's just a human trait to want to know more, to have special knowledge, to look for things like that. So, and the Book of Mormon is full of this, as you're going to point out.
Well, and I should say not just the Book of Mormon, but almost all religions have these special people who have a special knowledge that nobody else knows, and that's on purpose to get you to keep studying so that you become that person where you get to that level where you know the secrets.
Mm. Yeah, that's the whole gospel plan.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
So let's talk about some of the Book of Mormon ones. I just had this little overview, so you knew where we were going, and just some of the what is missing. If we're looking at the Book of Mormon, what are the things that are missing in it that we don't even realize are missing because we as humans we're not primed to look at what is missing. We're primed to look at what is there, and when things are missing, we fill in the gaps. And you've all seen this because again, a lot of those clickbait things. But somebody gives you a line of text, and you think you've read it, but then they ask you to go back and read it again. You realize the words are out of sequence, or the letters are changed around. Some of the things are missing, but your brain has filled in the gaps there. It has made it meaningful even when it was problematic or it was full of errors. And that's kind of what we are trained to do. We're trained to fill in the gaps, and so we don't really look at what is not there. We look at what is there. So one of the great things to train your body or your mind to do is to look at what's missing and try and figure out why it's missing and understand it. So I'm going to go through a few of these, and you've all heard them, and Landon's pointed to a couple of them already. That the Book of Mormon says it's not a full account. It's a 100th part of what's really there. It's too marvelous. There are some things that are forbidden. That some of the authors say, "Oh, this is sufficient, and I'm not going to write anymore." Other times they go, "Oh, look, we're so weak, we can't even write this down, but take it from us. It's amazing." And then there's some things in the Book of Mormon which are completely missing, which seem kind of a bit bizarre that they're not there. And of course, the idea is that if you're faithful enough and you've had a trial of your faith, that these special sacred things will be revealed to you. And so, of course, what you do is you fill in the gaps. You feel like it's special, even though it actually hasn't told you anything special. So that's lots of fun in that. And
this reminds me, I had a religion professor at BYU who flat out told us that there is a secret section of the D&C. And if you read for years, then finally one day, when you've reached this level of righteousness and knowledge and familiarity with the D&C, suddenly you'll be reading, and there it is. You've never seen it before. It will just appear before you. And so he encouraged all of us students throughout our life to just read the D&C to the point where someday, like him apparently, this whole section, Harry Potter-esque, right, out of nowhere, would suddenly appear, and it would be more light and knowledge. And we just went, oh, we couldn't believe it. The secret floating section, it's in there.
And how many of us kind of ascribe to those kinds of people this kind of deity kind of status, that they're so close to God that if we can just be around them, that we will be the people who will glean this
the crumbs from their table, crumbs of knowledge from their table of knowledge. Yeah.
It becomes a bit of a cult of personality, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. But we're all prone to it. Yeah. So here's I just thought about some things that we don't think of as missing, but are so missing in the Book of Mormon that are really important. And this is just an overview because we're going to go into specifics with the Book of Mormon text, but just to give you a primer of things that should be there that are not there. And there's lots of problems with the content of the Book of Mormon, and one of the biggest ones is that the Book of Mormon is dependent on a King James version of the Bible. And this is huge because what we should see is that Lehi's come from Jerusalem in 600 BC, and he's brought this record of scripture. We should see things which are ancient, which have antiquity, which give us a better understanding of the world and world religions and scripture that has been written. But we don't. All we actually see in the Book of Mormon are lots of King James Version text, which has been reworked for the Book of Mormon, or slightly changed for the Book of Mormon, but it's all dependent on this King James Version, which means that you can't get something which is more ancient than a 1611 King James Version. So this is one of the ways that if you were giving the Book of Mormon to a scholar, they would go, this isn't ancient, this is modern, because it has nothing that gives us anything. You think about how big the Dead Sea Scrolls find was, because what they found was manuscripts that were earlier than the ones that they already had. And that's what we should find with the Book of Mormon. It should tell us things which are more ancient than what was available to 19th century people, because this is a find of antiquity, apparently. But what we don't find that, which is
we'd actually have the oldest. If the gold plates were true, they would be the oldest document we have relating to ancient religion,
right?
Because
in the whole world.
Yeah, in the whole world.
And
yeah, we don't have anything that old anywhere.
No, in the Book of Abraham. I mean, it would be the greatest treasure in the world. It would have its own museum, its own city, probably built up around any of these findings.
Yeah. People would be scholars would be lining up at the door to and of course they are not. Why aren't they? Because it's
because what's missing? The gold plates.
Gold plates.
They're not to the point that the Smithsonian Institute had to write a letter that said, I don't go by the Book of Mormon. It's not really, anything to do with antiquity.
In fact, the Metropolitan Museum in New York actually had the manuscript that Joseph Smith, or the papyrus that Joseph Smith used to translate the Book of Abraham, which he has said was written by the hand of Abraham himself, which would have made it the oldest text in the world. The Metropolitan Museum would have had one of the greatest treasures ever known to man. Instead, they looked at it and said, this is a funerary papyrus. We have tens of thousands of these. Hey, LDS Church, do you want this thing back? We got plenty of them. That's how it wasn't worth
inconsequential.
Anything. Inconsequential it was, yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. We found somebody sent us a really interesting improvement era article about getting the papyri back, and it was exactly that. The Met said, it's fine. We have a lot here. Take it.
Nothing special here. Yeah.
Nothing special here. Yeah.
And that's what you're saying here is nothing special in the Book of Mormon that isn't already available in the King James version of the Bible, and certainly not anything older than what's in the King James Bible.
And this is a big problem for Jesus, right? Because Jesus in the Book of Mormon, it doesn't tell you anything about Jesus that you couldn't know from the King James version of the New Testament. Nothing. It's not like it's telling you where he was for 30 years before he went on his ministry. That he got married. It doesn't tell you that he got married, because that's not what the New Testament tells you. That's what later, LDS doctrine tells you, but not then. So you don't know anything about Jesus that you couldn't know from a King James version of the New Testament.
And in fact, the words that Jesus uses in the Book of Mormon are extremely problematic and confusing to people of the quote Book of Mormon, age and area. The hell's a sheep? Did he say sheep? What are olives? What is that guy talking about? He just destroyed, 16 cities, and now he's telling us about grafting something, an olive, a sheep. The words he uses don't relate to anything that they're trying to portray in that culture. So it's all problematic.
Yes, and that again is something that is incredibly missing. And sheep is a good example, which we've got on screen. Which, domesticated animals just weren't a thing in the Americas. So that meant that there's no such thing as flocks in the Americas. It just did not happen. And the things that should be there, like jaguars and deer, and they're just not in the Book of
Yeah,
Mormon.
corn, squash, the
Yeah,
major crops are not there. All the crops are crops that came from the old world.
that's right. So what you find is that all of the things that should be in the Book of Mormon are missing, and all of the things that are part of Joseph's worldview and life are all in the Book of Mormon. So this is a huge problem. That domesticated problem is a really big one, because one of the things that happened, of course, is when the Europeans came to the Americas, they brought a number of diseases with them that wiped out, millions and millions of people. The really big question is, why didn't the Europeans who interacted with Americans end up getting diseases from America that then they took back to Europe and decimated the populations in Europe? Why didn't that happen? And the reason is domestication of animals, because plagues are really diseases from animals that have jumped to humans and they're not supposed to be there, and so they kill too many humans. And so, of course, the Europeans had lots of domesticated animals, so they ended up having lots of, plagues, things that diseases that had transferred from animals to humans and had decimated the population, and people had built an immunity to them. So when they came to the Americas, they brought those plagues with them that decimated decimated the local population. But the people in the Americas, the ancient people in the Americas, they didn't have domesticated animals, so they didn't have those diseases that then they were, or immunity that they were able to pass on to the Europeans. That it didn't go both ways.
Yeah.
And that's one of the other big tells, is domestication of animals in the Book of Mormon is not a thing, did not exist. Of course, it doesn't. Yeah, it's missing in the historical record.
And the other thing with domestication of animals and crops is, their answer for there not being any DNA for Nephites and Lamanites was that they mixed with the peoples that were still there. But crops have DNA and animals have DNA. And those also don't show any indication that they came from. We can track where they came from. We know when they came. We know what line they came from. And we can see those crops did not exist in America to start with. They were brought by Europeans. And the same thing with the animals. There weren't sheep in America. They would not have died off. They wouldn't have been killed off. They would have still been there when they got there. So both the DNA and the fact that the animals, there's no skeletal remains. There's no, it's all missing that should have been there.
And domestication of animals and of crops are huge technologies that allow civilizations to thrive. So they're massively woven into the survivability and thrivability of any civilization. So you can track them because they are part of the makeup. The last point is the sealed section of the Book of Mormon. You used to hear a lot about this, of course, is that there's that bit of the Book of Mormon, 2/3 actually, that is it is yet to be revealed. And so if you're faithful enough that this is going to be, we're going to find it. The prophets are going to, let us know what it is that's in the sealed section. And so, again, that same kind of what is missing, this whole section, actually the majority of the plates of gold are sealed for just waiting for our righteousness to be able to reveal these things.
That's always a tell when something is sealed, right? Oh, you can't know it. It's just like when you look at the libraries and the special sections that you have to have permission to get into the vault to get this person's journal and First Presidency permission. Why do I need special permission to see something that should be open and that God has revealed to people? So sealed sections always should be a red light,
a red flag.
Yeah,
And
red
they
flag.
have a way of disappearing. I know Dr. John Lumrell has that story about being a student at BYU and finding a book that was like chained up in special collections. So like, what's this? You know, and it said you have to get access and get permission from someone very high up. He went through all this process, and then I think, if I remember correctly, it just kind of disappeared. Like he never got it, you know. So that's interesting. Knowledge is power, everybody.
Such as, yeah. And I mean, maybe Landon, can you take us through the full account of the Book of Mormon, or not full account?
This is great.
Maybe.
These are all the times where they're mentioning, but wait, folks, there's more.
There's more,
right?
So actually, there's more. There's many more than these. I just got a few of them across the breadth of the Book of Mormon, and if you notice, I've tried to put it in sequential order. So Mosiah first, and then Nephi last, just so you can see maybe some developments in the wording of those texts as you go on.
Yeah, and as I read through the slides, I'm like, I know you don't have everything here, but once you start to see the pattern and what they're doing, you'll start to realize this is throughout this line of speaking, and letting you know that there's more, if only.
Okay, Mosiah 1:8, and many more things did King Benjamin teach his sons, which are not written in this book. Alma 13:31, and Alma spake many more words unto the people, which are not written in this book. 3 Nephi 7:17, and he did minister many things unto them, and all of them cannot be written, and a part of them would not suffice. Therefore they are not written in this book. And Nephi did minister with power and with great authority. Ether 1:5, but behold, I give not the full account, but a part of the account I give from the tower down until they were destroyed. 1 Nephi 1:16, and now I, Nephi, do not make a full account of the things which my father hath written. For he hath written many things which he saw in visions and in dreams, and he also hath written many things which he prophesied and spake unto his children, of which I shall not make a full account.
Yeah, this is throughout. I love that one in 3 Nephi. All of them cannot be written, and a part of them would not suffice. Wherefore, I'm just not going to put it in.
I'm just not going to do any of it. Yeah, I would really like to know in the comments right now, have any of you ever noticed this in the Book of Mormon? Because I had not. It was one of those things where I'm like, are you kidding me? That this is there throughout. And I love it. It's a tactic, kind of. It's a tactic where you don't want to write anymore. Like Joseph doesn't want to write anymore. It makes it sound like it's so much bigger than it is, right? And so he just says, I can't write it all. I can't possibly tell you, but trust me, it's big. It's huge.
Yeah. Can you imagine any historian recording history and saying, oh man, there were so many cool things that happened in the revolution, but we can't write about all of them. So we're not going to say any of them, but believe me, it was cool.
It's like a device and a tactic. I remember when I was in an AP creative writing class in high school, and I had an assignment for a story or a paper, and I didn't do it. And it was Sunday night, and it was like 10 o'clock at night, and Monday morning it's due. And I'm like, crap. And I said, okay, I'm going to do a Hail Mary. I stapled 10 pages together, and I made a title, 10 blank pages. And I made a title page, and I said, an in-depth treatise on the phenomenon of writer's block in the post, whatever modern era. And then I cite by Rebecca, and I said, that's it. And it was completely blank except for that title page. And I turned it in, and I just crossed my fingers. I got it back, totally got an A. The teacher called me up. She goes, I wrestled with this because I couldn't decide if you were being incredibly creative or just lazy. She goes, I went with creative, and I gave you an A. And I was like, but it's a tactic. When you have nothing, you have to punt. And that's what this is. I'd tell you everything, but I just can't. But trust me.
Mm-hmm. We don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. In fact,
that's
a good story, can cover up for so many things that aren't quite right. Wow. All right. Rebecca, do you want to do this slide?
Yes, let's do more here. Helaman 3:14. But behold, 100th part of the proceedings of this people, yea, the account of the Lamanites and of the Nephites and their wars and contentions. Just 100th, right? 3 Nephi 5:8. Nevertheless, they cannot all be written in this book. Yea, this book cannot even contain 100th part of what was done among so many people in the space of 20 and 5 years. 3 Nephi 26:6. And now there cannot be written in this book even 100th part of the things which Jesus did truly teach unto the people. Ether 15:33. And he finished his record, and then in parentheses, and the 100th part I have not written, and he hid them in a manner that the people of Limhi did find them. Jacob 3:13. And 100th part of the proceedings of his people, which now began to be numerous, cannot be written upon these plates. Words of Mormon 1:5. Is it 1? Yes, 1:5. And I cannot write the 100th part of the things of my people. Now, I will say Joseph Smith always had favorite phrases that you can see when you read it in chronological. This is his phrase of the day. Hey, this sounds really cool. This sounds like I'm really smart. 100th part.
I remember this came up when we did Dr. Lundwall was on, and he was talking about it, and people would come back saying, "Oh, this is clearly just we were trying to figure out how thick the plates would have been,
Right.
Because he wrote all things and 100th part weren't on there. So, you're going, well, if only 100th part, but all things were written, then it would have had to been 100 times bigger." And they're all going, well, this is clearly a figure of speech. And I loved it. Dr. Lundwall said, yeah, but the Mayans and the Hebrews did not use a base 10 system, so he never would have wrote 100th part.
There was no zero.
Oh gosh, it's kind of so funny when you see it like this, because you can see that the other thing you can see is that the Book of Mormon's univocal. It's the same throughout. It's the same voice, because the same phrases are being used. Helaman, Nephi, Ether, Jacob, Words of Mormon.
They're all saying the same 100th part. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So, but you think 100th part is, can you imagine a Book of Mormon? So a Book of Mormon has about 276,000 words. Can you imagine a Book of Mormon that's 2 million words? And all of the things that are repetitive in the Book of Mormon, all the times that it's just said the same thing again and again and again and again, often in the same chapter. And yet there's all of these amazing things, 100th part, which, is being written. Why don't we just chop out the stuff which is repetitive and add in the stuff which we're missing? If we're missing 99% of the text, well, that's crazy.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. The very important stuff can't be written, yet it came to pass can be chiseled in over and over and over. And yet the very important stuff, we don't need to mention that.
And 100 parts couldn't be written. And yet there's this whole, is it Omni, where it's like, I was the son of so-and-so and I was bad and I didn't write anything and therefore I pass on the plate. Why put that in there? Why not put in something of the 100th part that was really important? But you chose to put in this part where he said, I am saying nothing.
Well, Joseph Smith needed to get from one date to another date, and that's why he filled it in, yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you start reading it to see the devices, it becomes pretty clear.
Yes. And the next one is how marvelous. And this is what we were talking about before. Helaman 5:33, and also again the third time the voice came and did speak unto them marvelous words which cannot be uttered by man. 3 Nephi 17:15, and when he had said these words, he himself also now. Oh, whoops, right back.
Back and forth. There's just too much.
Well, sorry.
There you go.
The things which he prayed cannot be written. That eye had never seen, neither hath the ear heard before, so great and marvelous things as we saw and heard Jesus speak unto the Father. And no tongue can speak, neither can they be written by any man, neither can the hearts of men conceive so great and marvelous things as we both saw and heard Jesus speak. And no one can conceive of the joy which filled our souls at the time we heard him pray for us unto the Father.
Wait a minute. No tongue can speak the words that we heard Jesus speak. And no man can hear, neither hath the ear heard. We both saw and heard Jesus speak. So evidently man can hear what he spoke and spake. So if he can speak them, why can't they write them? If someone can say it, you can write it.
Landon, that kind of logic is going to get you into trouble. You're not
It
going to see
already
the
has.
marvelousness of this if you keep looking for the details.
Yes,
Well,
yes. Don't
Landon's,
look in the details.
Landon's patriarchal blessing does tell him he will have a special knowledge greater than others of the gospel. And I told him, that's why you're on a podcast.
Mm. And it keeps going, right? 3 Nephi 19:34. Nevertheless, so great and marvelous were the words which he prayed that they cannot be written, neither can they be uttered by man. And Ether 13:13. And I was about to write more, but I am forbidden. But great and marvelous were the prophecies of Ether.
Who is forbidding him?
Oh, well, actually, we can.
Well, how could he write it? How could he be forbidden to write them if they're so that no man can write them? He wouldn't have been able to write them, but he was about to write them, and then he was forbidden to write them. So evidently, he could have written them. He was just forbidden. Oh, but we're on to forbidden.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, you give us the forbidden stuff, Landon.
3 Nephi 26:11. Behold, I was about to write them, all which were engraven upon the plates of Nephi, but the Lord forbade it, saying, I will try the faith of my people. Behold, it came to pass on the morrow that the multitude gathered themselves together, and they both saw and heard these children. Yea, even babes did open their mouths and utter marvelous things, and the things which they did utter were forbidden, that there should not any man write them. Wow, that one, I will try the faith of my people by saying, hey, there's all these marvelous things that you guys can't know, but you're responsible to accept them even though you can't hear them.
You can't know them. It's just ridiculous. What God acts that way? That's all I can say.
Ether 4:1, and they were forbidden to come unto the children of men until after that he should be lifted up upon the cross. 1 Nephi 14:28, and behold, I, Nephi, am forbidden that I should write the remainder of the things which I saw and heard. Wherefore the things which I have written sufficeth me. There's that sufficeth again. And I have written but a small part of the things which I saw. 2 Nephi 4:25, and upon the wings of his spirit hath my body been carried away upon exceedingly high mountains, and mine eyes have beheld great things, yea, even too great for man. Therefore I was bidden that I should not write them.
And don't you feel so special? There's all this forbidden stuff in the Book of Mormon. I mean, you don't even, your eyes just don't even register it when you read it, because there's a lot of stuff which is forbidden, and yet we never talk about the forbiddenness of the Book of Mormon or the forbidden text in the Book of Mormon, and yet it's there again and again and again.
Well,
and I feel Oh, go ahead, Landon.
I was going to say, I can tell you, I've been to the temple where I was forbidden to say things that I wasn't supposed to speak and tell to other people, and they weren't that marvelous. I can tell you, I walked away really disappointed from the temple going, that's it? Eat your Ovaltine or drink your Ovaltine?
Don't forget to drink your Ovaltine. A crummy commercial. Well, I feel like people don't, as we read this without thinking about it, we don't worry that it's forbidden, because in our minds, we know that we are chosen, we are special, and someday we will know. Nobody else will, but we will. Maybe in our lifetime, some of this will be revealed. It's not something that you think you'll never be privy to. You believe, being a member of the church, that you and you alone will eventually know all these marvelous things. So if anything, it's very titillating, right? Like you said, but wait, there's more. Don't leave now. This is incredible. And I think that's sort of an undercurrent of the whole thing. But when you put it together like this, it's baked in. It really is.
And Joseph is using this again and again, to excuse the text, to suggest that there is something amazing, wonderful, but there are reasons, why they're not there, so it does kind of, so then you do feel like, oh gosh, if I did this one thing, if my faith is tried, this will be revealed. It's clickbait, absolutely.
It's clickbait, and it opens the door to somebody like Mark Hoffman, right? I mean, as I understand it, he was working on the 116 pages. Can you imagine if any of these documents somehow it's pretty incredible to think, what people might be following. There's a lot of room. There's a lot of missing pieces of the puzzle that people could try to fill in themselves, you know?
And that's why we have all of these kind of schismatic breaks, right? Because
Yes,
people
that's
do,
it.
they
They
go,
do.
hey, I found something special.
Mhm.
I've
Mhm.
been, the forbidden has been revealed to me. So
Yeah.
come into my study
Mhm.
group and we'll find the forbidden together.
And,
Yeah, no,
it's okay. It's okay because the Book of Mormon says there's forbidden stuff that wasn't, and now it's okay because I have it. So you've justified that.
Yeah, no, and that's been going on forever. When I was in college, I was like 26 when I got married. So I had roommates that were returned missionaries. Everybody was going to the temple except for me, right? Mostly because I didn't want to go and I couldn't admit it. But I remember my roommates kept going a lot, and they're going, we're going to the temple with Bruce. He's a guy in the ward, right? And we're like, why do you keep going to the temple with Bruce? And they're like, well, Bruce knows things. He's able to tell us things. He has special knowledge about the ceremony, about the things that, and so we go to the temple, the same session with Bruce from the ward, and then we sit at his feet, my roommate said, in the celestial room, and he teaches us. And I remember going, that's insane. That guy with the ear hair, Bruce. I mean, but again, my roommates were really caught up in this person that was telling them that he had some kind of special insider track to what things really meant. You can do that with the scriptures too. You're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. Schism, false prophet, all that is a danger when you have this kind of text telling you there's more.
And that's Joseph to a T, right? Because mm-hmm. That's what he's saying. There's more. If you just follow me, if you keep listening at my feet, the forbidden will be revealed to you. Like the mysteries of God, and that's another code word in the Book of Mormon, which comes up a lot. Mysteries of God, they're going to be revealed to you, and I've got the keys, the seer stone, the wherewithal to be able to decipher this for you. So if you just listen to me, give me what I need, then I will give you these special hidden promises and forbidden understandings that you will be amazing from.
Yeah. Well, we have no trouble worshiping or listening and learning at your feet, Ganesh, because you have great information.
Oh gosh, I have to set myself up.
That's right. That's a lot of pressure. You could become a cult leader quite easily. So.
That's right. If only I didn't live at the end of the world where none of you could get a plane ticket to.
We'll travel there. That's right.
Rebecca, you want to take us through sufficient stuff?
Okay, here we go. Sufficient. Ether 3:17. And now, as I, Moroni, said, I could not make a full account of these things which are written. Therefore, it sufficeth me to say that Jesus showed himself unto this man. 2 Nephi 31:1. And now I, Nephi, make an end of my prophesying unto you, my beloved brethren, and I cannot write but a few things, which I know must surely come to pass. Neither can I write but a few words of my brother Jacob. And also, wherefore, the things which I have written sufficeth me. Jerem 1:2. And as these plates are small, and as these things are written for the intent of the benefit of our brethren the Lamanites, wherefore it must needs be that I write a little. But I shall not write the things of my prophesying, nor of my revelations. For what could I write more than my fathers have written? For have not they revealed the plan of salvation? I say unto you, yea, and this sufficeth me. Omni 1:11. And behold, the record of this people is engraven upon plates, which is had by the kings according to the generations. And I know of no revelation, save that which has been written, neither prophecy, wherefore that which is sufficient is written. And I make an end. There it is.
Yeah, we shouldn't be looking for more because it's sufficient. Why? So on the one hand, it's forbidden and you should, it's a trial of your faith. On the other hand, it's sufficient. Just be content with what you have. So it's
and this sufficeth me. Ether is written 1,000 years before any of these guys, yet they're still using the exact same sufficeth me. 1,000 years later, they're still using the same terminology. Now you can say, well, he's translating, so he's translating into English, but this term sufficeth me seems conveniently used between 5 different people, something that is not a standard term today. When you're translating it, why would you use the term sufficeth me? I don't even think sufficeth is a word. Is that a made-up word?
I think it is. I'm going to look it up right now. Look it up in the chat, guys. Is sufficeth? No, sorry, sufficeth. Is that even? English.
But it just rolls off the tongue so nicely.
Yeah, done.
I actually, in reading this, just spit all over my computer screen because I said the Python so many times. I gotta dust it off here because I can't see.
So funny. All right, and look, weakness. Oh gosh, these are the classic. It's funny to think of the Book of Mormon being its own apologetics, but one of the things that the Book of Mormon tends to do is make excuses for itself, and we've gone through a number of them. But one of the best ones is this idea of weakness. Just so good. Mormon 9:33, and if our plates had been sufficiently large, there's that sufficient again, we should have written in Hebrew, but the Hebrew had been altered by us also. And if we could have written in Hebrew, behold, ye would have had no imperfection in our record. But the Lord knoweth the things which we have written, therefore he hath prepared means for the interpretation thereof.
So what wasn't the Bible written in Hebrew? So there's no imperfections in the Bible, so it's the most correct of any book because it was written in Hebrew, unlike the Book of Mormon.
Again, Landon, details.
Yeah.
You're not supposed
Stop
to
thinking, Landon. You're just thinking too much.
You are connecting dots which are not supposed to be connected.
Stop.
Ether 12:25. Thou hast also made our words powerful and great, even that we cannot write them. Oh my gosh. Wherefore, when we write, we behold our weakness and stumble because of the placing of our words. And I fear lest the Gentiles shall mock at our words. And only a few have I written because of the weakness in my writing. So the idea that his words are so powerful, he cannot write them. That's yeah.
Well, that's because Hebrew hasn't been invented yet at the time of Ether. So there's no way he could have.
But you're so right about the apologetic and calling it out ahead of time. Gentiles shall mock our words. I'm literally laughing. I'm sorry, but I am. Here it is. It's come to pass. I am, sort of questioning the words, and there it is right there. So that's faith affirming.
This indicates a foreknowledge by the writers that this is going to be put into a book and also together because, Ether is at the time of the brother of Jared, and he's talking about Gentiles, but Gentiles don't even exist yet. Gentiles don't exist until Israel exists, which doesn't exist yet. So
stop doing the math, Landon.
Yeah,
this is very problematic.
Yeah, it's such a. The other part of this is, of course, that the Ether is written in the dictation sequence when Joseph is in Fayette, New York, and he's already getting these letters, and we know from the Joseph Smith Papers Project, he's having letters back and forth with his extended family, particularly his Uncle Jesse, and Uncle Jesse is saying, "This is the work of the devil. You guys are, engaging in something terrible," and so Joseph is already worried that the things that are being written in the Book of Mormon are not going to be received well because they're not being received well by his extended family. And so he's writing an apologetic into the text to allow for the fact that there's weakness in the text but it's just such an interesting kind of problem he's solving. He's solving the idea that, gosh, people are going to mock these words. They're not going to see them as great. So how am I going to tell people that they're great? Oh, well, let me tell them that the words are great, but the written form of them is not great. And I think this displays a knowledge of Joseph, of himself, right? Because he's a great orator. He's a wonderful speaker, but he doesn't write very well. He doesn't have paper and pen, and he doesn't, compose things incredibly well. He's a speaker. He's an orator, not a writer. And so the characters in the Book of Mormon are also great speakers, but not great writers. And you can see this in 2 Nephi 33:1. And now I, Nephi, cannot write all the things which were taught among my people, neither am I mighty in writing like unto speaking. And then, Jacob for one, again, another apologetic, and I cannot write but a little of my words because of the difficulty of engraving our words upon plates. So, the idea that the Book of Mormon is constrained because actually it's written on plates, and that's actually quite difficult to write on. So therefore, that's another reason why there's not much, text, why it doesn't have all of these amazing things that it purports to have, because there's just a constraint, either the weakness of the people or the weakness of the medium. Gold plates are not a great medium for this text.
Yeah, they can chisel out, it came to pass over and over and over. And, when I see these all written together, it reminds me of somebody that sort of gives themselves the benefit of the doubt before they start presenting information by saying, look, guys, I'm not perfect, but I want to tell you this, and that there's tons of forgiveness in that. Whatever you say, people are going to probably admire you more for being humble and admitting it up front. It kind of gives more power to your words, even if they're completely off base, because you said, look, I'm not perfect. What I'm going to tell you it might not be totally accurate, but, and then you forget the first part and you just hear what the person says. It's a tactic of delivery. And that's what's happening here.
It's a good point.
I kind of see it as an escape tunnel. This is Joseph. He's been on treasure digs where he's seen the treasure. He's seen it. He has to have a reason why they don't find the treasure in the end. So he leads you down a path, and then he says, oh, this happened and it slipped away, and that's why you didn't find it. And I think what you're showing here, because we know of the priority the Book of Mormon was written in, he's making all this apologetics at the end. This is Mormon, Ether, Nephi, and Jacob. These are the last books written that he's mentioning that they're weak. So it's almost like he's been leading us down this path, and now he's given himself an escape route of, oh, well, if there's anything, it's because, I'm weak, and that's why it's not the way it should be.
That's a fantastic point. It is all at the end where he's making these excuses, and we see there also a number of second person narrative in the text where the authors are speaking directly to the audience and developing what you were talking about before, Rebecca, that empathy. You're in relationship with Mormon, you're in relationship with Moroni, you're in a relationship with Nephi, because he's speaking to you and explaining his weakness, getting that humility, but the idea that you are then now drawn into relationship with this character, and this character is going to meet you at the bar of Christ, right? So you're going to see him and have to account for your faith to heed his words, and that ability to develop empathy with this character, this person in history that you are actually going to meet in the future. It's a really interesting literary technique that develops a relationship. You have a relationship with these people. Very clever.
Yeah, it makes them very accessible. They're not just talking at you, they're bringing you into it. Look, try to understand what I'm saying and the reason I'm doing it. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a device.
And you're right, Landon. He's doing this with his treasure digging because he's got to explain why there's no treasure. So he's got to provide empathy with the treasure diggers, because he's the one kind of directing them. So he's got to provide some empathy so that they don't feel like he's let them down. They've got to, we're going to talk about that in just a minute, I think.
Great observations. Oh.
All right. Completely missing. Take us away, Landon.
Okay, Alma 10:2. I am Amulek. I am the son of Gideonah, who was the son of Ishmael, who was a descendant of Ammonadi, and it was that same Ammonadi who interpreted the writing which was upon the wall of the temple, which was written by the finger of God.
So yeah, this completely missing from the Book of Mormon. We don't have this
we don't
story.
know. I was just thinking, where did the hand of God write on a temple wall? And that's what you're saying is missing. There's no story about that.
Just know there. And partly this may be the lost manuscript. It may be in the lost manuscript and it just didn't get put into the replacement text. So we have a number of these in where it talks about some things, and then you just realize that they're just not there at all.
And
Okay.
I know that you showed some examples on some of our other podcasts of where things were missing, and then he quickly had to go back and kind of fill it in. You know, there are places where he catches it, and then he does tell the story that's missing. But in these cases, you're saying it's just in the wind. There's no explanation for what it is.
Of course, an apologist would make the argument, well, see, this just proves that there was a 100th part not missing. He's referring to something that didn't make it in. So I can see them making that argument.
This is a clue, a hint of some of the other things.
Yeah.
And if only you were faithful enough, it would be revealed to you.
Yeah, it would be revealed.
See, that's our problem. The faithfulness of the three of us together don't equal even to get one little description of whatever was written on the temple wall. That's it.
Okay, Mormon 4:11, and it is impossible for the tongue to describe or for man to write a perfect description of the horrible scene of the blood and carnage which was among the people, both of the Nephites and of the Lamanites, and every heart was hardened, so that they delighted in the shedding of blood continually.
And this, I guess, this is kind of like the opposite, right? Instead of it being marvelous and amazing, suddenly it's it's
so bad,
horrible and terrible, and so you kind of getting shortchanged on both ends of the sheet,
there's some, you can be pretty descriptive in describing horrible scenes of blood and carnage, and they really don't have many scenes of blood and carnage that are, where they're saying, guts were laying, you could go into quite a bit of depth. So you could describe some of that blood and carnage, and they never really go into any depth on that. So, Ether 4:4, behold, I have written upon these plates the very things which the brother of Jared saw, and there never were greater things made manifest than those which were made manifest unto the brother of Jared. And in that day that they shall exercise faith in me, saith the Lord, even as the brother of Jared did, that they may become sanctified in me, then will I manifest unto them the things which the brother of Jared saw. So, I can't imagine, you sit here going, what could he have possibly seen that is that, that he can't say what he saw. We know he saw the finger of God, according to his own thing. So what more could he have seen that was more incredible than that?
Up to the elbow.
Up to the elbow, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he saw into his bosom. We don't know.
But again, the promise there, right? That's what hooks you in. You just got to stay with it, and you will know. You can't leave now. Movie's only half over. Don't leave now.
And then Omni 1:18, but it came to pass that Messiah caused that they should be taught in his language. And it came to pass that after they were taught in the language of Messiah, Zarahemla gave a genealogy of his fathers according to his memory, and they are written, but not in these plates. So he had them according to his memory. They wrote them down, but we don't have them.
So all of these things are just not there. And there's actually quite a lot of these. These are just a few that I picked out, but there are lots of things that the Book of Mormon suggests that are part of the record, which are just not there. And some of it's because you're not faithful enough. Some of it's because it's just too hard to describe. Some of it's because it's just not going to be available to you. And so, you end up, which is probably the next idea, that it's going to be there as long as you keep on going. So maybe take us through that, Rebecca.
Yeah, this is trial of your faith, which I guess is kind of like endure to the end, right? This is it. So Ether 12:5, and it came to pass that Ether did prophesy great and marvelous things unto the people, which they did not believe because they saw them not. And now I, Moroni, would speak somewhat concerning these things. I would show unto the world that faith is things which are hoped for and not seen. Wherefore dispute not, because ye see not, for ye receive no witness until after the trial of your faith. And that kind of goes along with when they said, God's going to test you, right? It's a test. So 3 Nephi 26:8. And these things have I written, which are a lesser part of the things which he taught the people. And I have written them to the intent that they may be brought again unto this people from the Gentiles, according to the words which Jesus has spoken. And when they shall receive this, which is expedient, that they should have first to try their faith. And if it shall be that they shall believe these things, then shall the greater things be made manifest unto them. That's milk before meat right there. That's exactly saying that. And if it so be that they will not believe these things, then shall the greater things be withheld from them unto their condemnation, which right there is slippery treasure, right? You had a chance, but it's gone.
It's gone.
It's gone.
Oh, and this is, you can see in these texts that Joseph is, especially in that Ether one, Joseph is responding to some of the criticisms that are happening to him. He's in Ether chapter 12. Joseph is in Fayette, New York. There's a lot of people in the Whitmer home. He's dealing with the idea that people in Palmyra and letters from his extended family, they're not believing. And he's, again, it's another apologetic, but the idea that they don't believe because they're not seeing the same things that he is seeing. They're not, and he's giving them this out, and this idea that you're not going to receive this witness unless you're willing to believe first. So you have to believe, and then that belief will be confirmed. But if you don't believe, then even that which God might have given you is going to be taken away. So it's kind of it's dealing with this kind of carrot and the stick, right? Carrot. Yep. If you believe, you'll get it. If you don't believe, it'll be beaten out of you.
It doesn't escape me that Ether is using the exact same definition for faith that Hebrews 11:1-3 gives. So he's using the New Testament definition of faith 1,000 years before it's ever written. However, the people who would have been around Joseph Smith would have been very familiar with this definition of what faith is. Yet Ether 3,000 years earlier is writing that same definition that would convince these people around Joseph who are familiar with the Hebrews that what faith is and that they have to have faith in him and believe in him.
Well, to be fair, it's Moroni that's speaking, so he's in a post 400 AD setting. But you're absolutely right. There's no way he could get this information from Paul because, of course, there's no communication between the old and the new worlds. So
you're right. It is Moroni.
Yeah.
Moroni is referring to Ether, what Ether saw. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So it's 1,600 years before Hebrews. Hebrews would have been around at that time. However, he would have no access to Hebrews.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. And again, this goes back to our very first slide. The Book of Mormon is dependent on the King James Version. We're not getting any information in the Book of Mormon that would give us any insights into pre-King James Version, right? It's not giving us an ancient version.
And it's interesting that he shows up to the people. He shows them things they can't write 100th part. He says things that they can't say. And so what do we get? We get the exact same thing he taught the people back in Jerusalem. We get the same words, nothing different. Even though he told them way more stuff, the only thing he's going to report is the exact same thing we already have. So what's the purpose of having another witness of him saying the same thing somewhere else when he said so many other things that aren't reported?
It's it's maddening when you start to look at it like this and start to see these forms of manipulation, really, because they're really putting the onus onto the person. It's your faith that's not enough. It's the reason why you don't have this is because you're not close enough to God yet. But once you are close enough to God, then it will be revealed and you'll be completely in. Like it's a secret club that you have to promise to adhere to before you even know what the that sounds like something
familiar.
well, maybe they were revealed to us. Polygamy got revealed to us later. Yeah. And blacks not being able to have the priesthood, that got revealed to us later. There's other gospel things that were revealed later that aren't in the Book of Mormon. Maybe that's what he was talking about.
And then we're in apostasy because everything was repealed, right?
Yeah, because it was all repealed later.
Well, all I can say is that the most important thing in the Book of Mormon that they made sure that was in there, the most important thing, and you know what I'm going to say because it's my hot button, infant baptism. As long as that is in there, the debate over infant baptism, which was so important to the people, thousands of years ago, as long as that made it in there over and over, it's got to be important.
I love that example. It's one of my favorite too, because it's not just infant baptism is wrong, one verse. It's a diatribe. Like this guy, Mormon, as he's writing to his son about this, he is, he's going on and on and on about how terrible it is, and it's totally out of place in time because we already know that Mormon is told in the Book of Mormon not to preach to people, so there's no reason why he should be talking about this, and that there's no kind of church at the time because everything's so scattered. So who's baptizing people in the first place, and why are they baptizing infant people? And then we find out that they are there's cannibalism, and for some reason cannibalism gets like 2 or 3 verses, and infant baptism gets like 30 verses. Like if I was thinking about, well, if you're going to give somebody a pass, infant baptism, but cannibalism, it should be the other way around.
Maybe they baptize them before they eat them. It's hard to know,
stop. No, there's a really funny, it's a video. I don't think it may have come from Scripture Central. I've seen it on the church website. It's a little short, like vignettes from the Book of Mormon. And there's, I can't remember who it is, but a Book of Mormon couple, of course, dressed, like with like a bathrobe and a towel. And I mean, it's just ridiculous. And they're standing outside of their house, like making pottery or peeling apples or watching TV. I mean, that's how anachronistic it is. And a messenger comes up and hands a message to the husband, and the wife's like, what is it? It's from Moroni. It's about infant baptism. It's just absurd. I have to find it and post it because it's just ridiculous. I can't stress that more.
And the other part of it, of course, is that we don't use it. It's not like one of our bastion, ideas that we go and that we go and evangelize the world with. Please stop infant baptism. We have this beautiful record of Scripture which tells us how devastating and how terrible infant baptism. We've got all these amazing verses of Scripture directly from Jesus, because that's what Mormon says, right? That he's been told this by God to write this down, and yet we are not taking that message to the world. It's not like the missionaries are standing out with placards going, infant baptism's the worst thing ever.
No, that's a really good point. And I know that Elder Bednar just recently used that. He was at a fireside that was widely reported where he told people to sing very fervently. They started to stand up to sing because you do. He jumped up to the pulpit and said, stop, this practice is not appropriate. This standing while the presiding authorities are sitting, this is how it starts, like infant baptism. These doctrines, they become polluted. So he's definitely using that as an example. So, and I feel like maybe some of our listeners and viewers don't know why I call this my hot button or why this is such a big deal. The Book of Mormon does go on extensively about the evils of infant baptism, which was a debate of the 19th century, a hot debate between different evangelical, groups and Catholicism. And so the fact that appears in the Book of Mormon is what we're talking about. Absolutely ridiculous. Nobody in that era, Nephites, Lamanites, thousands of years ago, would be concerned in the least about infant baptism. Who was concerned? Everyone in Joseph Smith's day. So to me, it's a huge smoking gun. It's, a huge anachronism, but that's kind of what we're talking about here. That does not belong in a record of an ancient people. However, it is, a huge debate in Joseph's time that he would be very familiar with and included in the Book of Mormon.
Of course, it doesn't pass the common sense test either. I mean, can you see Mormon after all of this verses saying, infant baptism is evil, it's wicked, it's adulterous, and the people go, oh, I knew it. What age should we baptize our kids? 8. 8 is the right one.
8.
That's when kids are old enough to really understand what they're doing.
What?
Really? 8?
Didn't move the needle much, did we?
No, didn't move it much.
And I would add too that this that infant baptism section, which is in Moroni, is at the end of the dictation sequence when Joseph is in Fayette, New York, with the Whitmers, and we see a number of anti-Catholic passages and rhetoric in these books at the end of the Book of Mormon and into the beginning in First and Second Nephi with the Great and Abominable Church. So it seems to me that Joseph is playing to the audience, and his primary audience are the Whitmers, who have this very anti-Catholic sentiment, and he is, giving them exactly what they feel like a scripture should say, which is Catholics are bad, in this particular context of time. And I don't think it's something that Joseph is actually that concerned about. He doesn't know any Catholics. Yeah. He doesn't care about them, but the Whitmers do. And so that's why it ends up in this particular part of the Book of Mormon, ending part of the Book of Mormon when he's in Fayette, New York. So these are all really big tells that Joseph is producing this as he's going, with the information and catering to the audience that is around him. And of course, these are, like you said, hot button topics for the Whitmers. It's not even a hot button topic for Joseph, because if it was, it would be in Mosiah or in Alma, but it's not. It's only through into really late in the piece when he's in Fayette, New York.
And that makes sense because he was the king of playing to his audience, knowing his audience, knowing what they wanted to hear, what they cared about, and, providing that. So he had them in the palm of his hand. So I can totally see it. The Whitmers are like, hey, anything in your book, did they talk about infant baptism? And Joseph's like, yeah, you know what? Give me half an hour. Yeah, there's some really important stuff about that.
Kind of like the Deseret News. Anytime there's a criticism against the church, all of a sudden there's an article from BYU study that confirms what they needed.
Yeah, give me half an hour. That's it.
Give me half an hour. I'll call BYU. We'll have a study for you.
Oh, dear boy.
Gosh, and look, Joseph is filling gaps, right? He's, he's finding little bits and pieces and going, oh gosh, I need to address that. Oh gosh, I need to address that. That's what, gosh, the whole of the Book of Moroni is actually just gap filling, where he's like, oh gosh, there's a few things that I need to insert in here so it makes sense, and that's again a really big tell that it's Joseph. But the other big thing is, of course, the fact that there are all of these forbidden, marvelous, sufficient things in the Book of Mormon is that you end up with a number of gaps in the text, which make you feel like it's special, but there isn't actually any information to tell you it's special. So I think one of the great innovative things about the Book of Mormon is it has enough gaps that you fill it in yourself with your imagination, because if it is special and you have to have this great faith for it to be special, you do that in your head, you fill it in with your imagination, and we are really good as people in, this is our humanness to be able to fill in the gaps. And here's a couple of fill in the gaps kinds of scriptures. One from 2 Nephi 28:29. Woe be unto him that shall say, we have received the word of God, and we need no more of the word of God, for we have enough. For unto him that receiveth will I give more, and from him that shall say, we have enough, from them shall it be taken away, even that which they have. So the idea that if you're willing and open, gosh, the Lord's going to fill in the gaps with, and of course you do that yourself.
Again, out of time and place, because 2 Nephi, for who in 600 BC is saying we've got all the word of God and we don't need any more. That's out of Revelations. That's a thing of Joseph's time, where people say we've got the Bible, we don't need any more. That's not a problem in 2 Nephi's time, when they don't even have a Bible yet. It hasn't even been put together yet.
You don't have the word of God.
Oh, we got too much Bible already, and we don't even have a Bible.
A Bible, too much Bible.
Too much Bible.
Details. And you keep finding these details.
This was the problem I had with my bishop. He said, you need to read the scriptures more. I said, every sentence I read, I find a problem.
More problematic.
Oh gosh. Look, this is Moroni's promise too, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a fill in the gaps promise. You know, when you shall read these things, if it will be wisdom in God that you should read them, that you would remember how merciful the Lord has been unto the children of men from the creation of Adam, even down unto the time that you shall receive these things, and ponder it in your heart. So you know, think of all those wonderful feelings that you've had about the scriptures. Have that in your heart. And when you shall receive these things, I would exhort you that you would ask God, the eternal Father, in the name of Christ, if these things are not true. And if you shall ask with a sincere heart, with real intent, having faith in Christ, he will manifest the truth of it unto you by the power of the Holy Ghost. And by the power of the Holy Ghost, you may know the truth of all things. And so, you know, if you're thinking, gosh, all of these marvelous things that the Book of Mormon talks about, that it doesn't actually tell you about, but you know that it alludes to, and then you're pondering them in your hearts, and you're feeling this idea that there's these things, and you're filling in the gaps because that's what you do as a human. And the idea that you can have this feeling, this inspiration, this Holy Ghost that then fills in the gaps, that makes known all the truth of all of these things and reveals them to you personally. So you have a spiritual witness that it's slightly genius in a way, because it's clickbait. Sure, there's all of this amazing stuff. Really, where is it? Well, just think about it, and then it'll come to you that it's amazing. And
no, it's incredibly brilliantly manipulated, because if you read it from the other point of view, it says only a person with a non-sincere heart and no real intent and no faith in Christ would arrive at the fact that this is not true. So you yourself was like, well, I'm a good person. So that means I have to arrive at it as true. If you read it from that other perspective, it's incredibly manipulative. You are pressured, in your mind into saying, I'm a good person. Therefore, a bad person would find this not true. Oh, I find it true. That's just how you're manipulated, and you can manipulate yourself by that technique.
And you do manipulate yourself by filling in the holes.
That's it.
Because then you came up with the answer, and it makes sense in your mind now.
Yep.
And so you believe it because it makes sense in your mind, and you say, I worked that out on my own. The Lord must have helped me get there, Yeah,
it's way more powerful if someone can manipulate you into coming up with something themselves, that it's different from you telling. I mean, we use this on our kids all the time, right? You let them come up with what they want, which is actually what you want. I know it's terrible, but we all do it to some extent or another, but it works. Anything that originates in your own mind is going to be more powerful than something that somebody tells you or introduces into your mind. So that's what this is doing right here.
Yeah, the things that the most convincing things are the things we convince ourselves of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Just it's brilliant, and of course that makes it so that it's very difficult on the other side, right? How do you unconvince yourself? We've all been there. It's tricky, really tricky.
Yep, it's hard to do that. You have to pretty much unthink your own brain. I mean, you really do, and it's very difficult to do. And your brain fights tooth and nail to stay where it's comfortable with what it already believes. That's cognitive dissonance. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And this goes back to what you were talking about before, Landon, that kind of idea of how Joseph is using how he's practicing these techniques prior to the Book of Mormon, because he is the seer, he is the leader of the treasure gang, so he has to explain why it is that things don't turn up, and how does he develop enough empathy with his team so that they don't blame him, right? So they blame themselves maybe for the lack of the treasure, but also, how is he creating an image in their minds, which they are then turning into their own stories, so they're convincing themselves about the nature of this particular activity, that it's right, that it's actually happening, that it's because this is all unseen, right? It's all under the ground. It's all the only person who's presumably seeing what's going on is the seer, So everybody else who is digging the hole has to use their imagination to see these monsters, guardian spirits under the ground. And he's creating images in people's heads that they are attaching their whole, enthusiasm to. Maybe take us through those, Landon, if you could.
Okay. Joseph Sr. soon returned and said that Joseph Jr. had remained all this time in the house, looking in his stone and watching the motions of the evil spirit, that he saw the spirit come up to the ring and cause the money to sink. You
Sorry.
made it disappear.
Sorry, that wasn't.
The evil spirits are in our slideshow. They don't want you to continue reading. One back.
Gosh.
Okay,
We're
caused the money to sink. We then went into the house, and the old man observed that we had made a mistake in the commencement of the operation. If it had not been for that, said he, we should have got the money. So he had the back door, the escape tunnel. Yep. That was William Stafford, Manchester neighbor, 1833. Another one, Joseph Jr. would not look again, pretending that he was alarmed the last time that he looked on account of the circumstances relating to the trunk being buried came all fresh to his mind, that the last time that he looked, he discovered distinctly the two Indians who buried the trunk, that a quarrel ensued between them, and that one of said Indians was killed by the other and thrown into the hole beside of the trunk to guard it, as he supposed. Docket entry 20, March 1826, New York versus Joseph Smith, -A, 20 March 1826. So this was his trial, I think, the treasure digging trial, where this was said.
So these are really good examples. These are contemporary examples of how Joseph is telling a story in such a way that he develops empathy. Like you think of this this one in the trial. He's pretending that he's alarmed. He's going, I can't look in the stone anymore. The last time I looked, I saw how the Indians had killed the other Indians and chucked them in the hole, and the gore and the ground. I can't. And so these provide empathy from the listener to Joseph that makes him feel like, oh gosh, I shouldn't press him too much. He's obviously seen something in his stone which has caused him to have a reaction, and look, he's obviously telling the truth because he's alarmed. It's the same thing that Joseph is doing when he's reading. This is a story that Emma tells later. That he reads the story about with Jerusalem having walls, and he's like, "Oh, Emma, has Jerusalem got walls?" And Emma's like, "Yes." And he's like, "Oh gosh, phew! I thought I was deceived." And it's a really powerful trick. And Rebecca, you alluded to it earlier, that idea of empathy, of, oh gosh, if I can empathize with somebody's distress, and then I can give them a pass, and if I can empathize with the Book of Mormon author's distress about their weakness in their writing, then I can give them a pass. I can and Joseph is creating these to develop his story, making it more believable, and of course the people who are listening are filling in the gaps because they're going, gosh, he's really seeing this. And they kind of see it in their mind's eye, so they are able to buy into the story in such a way that they get the reaction that Joseph wants them to get.
Yeah, and look at William Stafford's statement there, because in order to go on the treasure dig, you've put money in, right? You've put money yourself, you've paid Joseph all this. So this person has money in this, but finally he comes to the conclusion, oh, we made a mistake in the commencement of the operation. And if it hadn't been for that, we would have it's our fault. We're not mad at you, Joseph. It's fine that we paid you. We did something wrong and we were so close, and we're sorry almost that we failed you, Joseph. So he did it perfectly there to elicit this kind of a statement from this person who is simply being conned by him. And that is the mark of a brilliant manipulator of people, a genius at that kind of tactic, that the person doesn't even understand they've been scammed. And in fact, they relate to and have sympathy and empathy for the person who perpetrated the scam.
And Josiah Stoll is a good example of this, because in that
Yeah.
1826 trial, he goes and says, I really believe Joseph could see this. No, he didn't give me the treasure that I was seeking, but I firmly believe that he is sincere and right, and that he would have got that if some evil spirit, circumstance had not stood in the way. And so, yeah, Joseph is sincere, and that sincerity can be used against the person who he's talking to.
Yeah, I know John Lundwell always says that his skill that let him do all this is that he was able to lie in a way that nobody else would. He could look someone straight in the face and tell a complete fabrication and lie with complete sincerity. The rest of us, it's the mark of a sociopath, kind of. The rest of us couldn't do that. We can't fathom doing that. So we can't understand that another person can do that back to us, to be able to tell an untruth with such sincerity. Who would do that? We would say, well, people do that. And those are the people that can manipulate the best.
Yeah. And Joseph honed these skills over years. One of the things that Brian Hales talks a bit about is, did he have skills prior to the Book of Mormon? Well, yes, he did. These statements indicate he had some incredible skills of being able to, because he's a grown man, right? People much older than him. He's only a young man when he's doing all of this. But there are people old enough to be his parents, influential men in the community who are going on these digs, who are listening to his rhetoric through the stone, and they are fully convinced that Joseph is seeing what he's telling them he's seeing, and buying into that story in such a way that they're giving up resources, time, money, lodging for Joseph and his family. So this is an incredible skill. It's really developed, and Joseph has developed it to a T. And I think one of the things that he did get a bit of a scare in 1826 with this trial, because he realized, gosh, I was lucky, that these older men kind of support me, but I'm not going to be able to do this forever. So part of the idea of changing the Book of Mormon from a adventure, story through to a spiritual witness, it's less provable, less, falsifiable, and he can, invoke these images. People have already got this strong Christian bent. They want to do what is right. They are seeking for Christ, and he can weave that into the narrative in such a way that they feel validated by the kinds of things that the Book of Mormon's talking about, such that they invest in it. And it's hard to disprove.
A treasure guardian becomes an angel. And this is a tactic still used today. Organizations that are under scrutiny. I'm thinking I just watched the documentary on the Twin Flames universe, right? And they were not a church to begin with until they got in, some trouble. And they're like, oh, you know what? No, we're a religion. We're fine. We're a religion. And then you can do what you want, right? Just become a religion. And all the crazy batshit stuff you're doing, it's fine. It's protected. He was doing that. He just morphed it.
Yeah, it's very clever, and I mean, we've approached this with a bit of humor so we can laugh at it, but it has real world implications, and it has had obviously real world implications for all of us, but also millions of members of the church. So it's really tough stuff, but it is quite comical when you look through it and you find the patterns, and you kind of go, oh gosh, these are some really clever ways of operating this in such, hopefully we see the humor of it and not the kind of the angst of it.
Yeah. No, he had skills. I've always said that. He's a mad genius. He absolutely had skills. But yeah, when you first brought that up to me, just this whole concept, I was like, well, that's interesting. What? And I started looking at some of the information you were giving me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I never see that or recognize it? And then once you do see it, like so many things, you can't unsee it. Like you see only that. So now I feel like I can look through a lot of other scriptures perhaps and find the same kind of tactic where you're just leaving the audience waiting, filling in the gaps. It reminds me of I've talked about it before that my spouse used to DJ stake dances, and I would go and help with the different stuff. And the stakes were always worried about the lyrics of songs, right? So one of their ideas, we'd often get radio edits, but one of their ideas was to just turn down the music when there was a word that wasn't acceptable, that they felt, right? Even something that wasn't even, anything. And so we were constantly trying to, and the kids are out there. The kids don't dance anymore today. They just get in big groups and they sing at the top of their lungs. And so when we would turn down the word, what originates in their own mind and comes out of their own mouth, the word sex, we're like, oh, okay, whatever it is, more powerful because you said it and thought it yourself. So those gaps, they're really important as far as having it originate with your own mind and making it more powerful. But yeah, it was pretty entertaining. They finally realized that wasn't good. And so then we went to radio edits, and then the dances were canceled altogether because, there was just nothing they could do. Plus they had trouble with same-sex couples dancing. And when they forced us, I know off topic, to make the announcement, boys only dance with girls, girls only with boys, then we kind of on our own went, you know what? Okay, we're done. So again, off topic, but not really. When you create a gap by turning down the music, something's going to fill that gap, right? Something interesting. What do you think, Landon?
I want to thank Ganesh for filling in the gaps about the gaps, because it's a
Maybe
gap
that's our
I don't
title.
think most of us knew about. And yeah, I think I knew those things were in there. I didn't know they were in there that often. And when you see the pattern and you see it often and used over and over in different sections by different so-called authors, that's when you start saying, wow, everyone's saying the same thing in the same way. Something is wrong here.
Yeah, I think that's true. Any final thoughts, Ganesh? You did such a good job once again. I mean, seriously, this is so easy to understand now that you put it in this format for us, right?
Gosh, I love this kind of stuff because it just blows your mind how easy we are led along in a particular way. Like I feel embarrassed about how susceptible I am to clickbait. Even now as an adult scrolling through Facebook, I'm still, it still comes up all the time. And to know that this is baked into our DNA and is really incredible. So hopefully it's something that we can use to help inoculate us, and be aware of it at least when we're doing it. And the idea of this God of the gaps, that we have talked about a God that has a lot of holes in it. And so what do? We fill in those holes with our imagination, with our feelings, with our hopes and desires, and that becomes the God that we worship. We're kind of almost worshiping the space in between what people are telling us. And that makes it personal. It makes it so that we feel like we're getting revelation. We feel like we are understanding the world. And that's a really interesting way that we deal with the fact that things don't add up a lot of the times. We fit our own, meaning and understanding into those sections in between. So it's a very human thing to do. And as hopefully we've shown, it can be used against us every single day for whatever reason. And we just have to be really mindful that, that's what's happening.
That makes me think of sort of the church on a larger scale, because a lot of times, a lot of us say on our podcast, why aren't they weighing in on this, right? Why are they allowing Restore Progressive Mormons to exist and Prepper Mormons to exist? There's, like I've always said, somebody sitting next to me at church, or two people sitting together, they're living a whole different gospel. And maybe that's what it is. It is a gospel of gaps. By not authoritatively weighing in on some of these bigger questions or tamping them down or whatever you want to call it, it allows people to exist in the gaps and to continue attending because they can fill in and live by whatever gap theology they want to, because there are so many different LDS people that believe so many different things right now, yet they're all still attending and they're all paying tithing. And that's okay then. So
Yeah.
it could just be
Absolutely.
larger than that.
We need less temples and more of the gaps.
More the gaps. That's right. Fill those gaps.
Mind the gap. Mind the gap.
Mind the gap. But as soon as you fill in a gap, you've alienated people that have, created their own theology within that gap.
Yeah.
So I'm telling
you, it out.
They're not going to do that, because as long as these little groups who have different beliefs, fringe or whatever, as long as they're paying tithing and sitting in the seat, that's okay. So the gap is good.
It's like a balloon. If there's a gap, it can expand, and you can expand into other areas. If you filled it in, it's just going to explode because there's nowhere for it to go. So
it's a gap religion. Wow. And we're not talking about the Gap, which does have awesome clothes. So I don't know. There's so much to this. I think it's just a broader idea. And I hope that you guys have been commenting in the chat. I hope that you'll leave comments on this. Have you ever even entertained this idea? Noticed it? What do you think about this in the scriptures? What do you think about it like we just came up with in a broader context? Where the nebulousness, again, my favorite word, I try to use it whenever I can, of, theology, this gap here allows people to fill it in, get a testimony of their own beliefs, think, it's completely right, and live that. I mean, it explains a lot to me. So please comment and let us know what you thought about this incredible presentation. Please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit that notification bell. If you would like to make a donation to Mormonish Podcast, we have links in the show notes to that. And we say it every time, but we mean it. We appreciate everybody who does donate. You guys are just incredible, and it means so much to us. We also have links in the show notes to our merch store where you can pick up Mormonish merch. And again, thank you, Ganesh. You're like just always the guest that delivers. You bring a slideshow and you're like, let's have this awesome, incredible conversation. And I want to encourage everybody to go check out Ganesh's content. The old Come Follow Me from last year was incredible. Church history and Ganesh following it. Are you kidding? This is going to be incredible what you're going to come up with next. So yeah, we're definitely all going to be following your content. It's wonderful. And thanks again for coming on. It, kind of short notice. We're like, let's do it. So it was great.
Always a pleasure, and it's a lot of fun being with you guys. You bring scholarship and humor in such a positive way that I think that it's just it fills in an incredible gap.
It fills in a gap. Ganesh said it. There you go. And thanks, Landon, once again for filling in the gap of I'd be sitting here by myself if you weren't there. So it's all about the gaps today, everybody. So all right, we will see y'all next time on Mormonish. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.